Depression is mysterious, It's not clean like math, not 2 + 2 = 4. So you could get depressed when you're 14 or when you're 54.
Depression will affect 3 of every 10 adults, and whether that's you or someone you love, there's hope. Let's talk about it with Chris Easterly on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
Hey, we're so glad you're here. You always have a place at our table. And we recognize the gift you give us of time. And you should recognize the gift that we give you of time. And together, we'll celebrate and laugh and speak in tongues and dance. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. In case you're wondering, I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Matthew Porter, our executive producer, is here. Matthew just turned 50. It's all downhill from here out. That means he can remember when MTV played music, but can't remember why he walked into a room. And our producer, Jinx, is in the little glass booth. And yes, in case you didn't know, Jinx is just Jinx. Like Madonna or Prince or Attila or whatever.
Gandhi.
Gandhi, there you go.
Let's go back to Attila.
Our one-man IT department, John Myers, is in the tech bunker. John just fixed my computer, and I rise up and call him blessed. In fact, I'm tempted to give him a standing ovation. John's, by the way, Christmas light display is so big, anytime he gets sick, the power company sends him a get well soon card.
High roller.
And Dr. George Bingham is the president of Key Life. George's leadership philosophy is walk softly, carry a big coffee. And Kathy Wyatt is the soft feminine side of this program. Kathy says today is National Authors Day, so if you know an author somewhere, give them a big hug and then remind them they're late on their deadline. We have a great program planned for you today. I've been reading this book, and the scripture says that Jesus says, I am the truth. That means wherever truth is spoken, Jesus is present. And this book is not a book by psychiatrists, thank you, God. It is not a physician. It's not written by a philosopher, thank you, God. It's a book written by a screenwriter, one you wouldn't expect to write a book like this. He went through clinical depression, walked that dark road, and he is so honest about it that it will blow you away. And we're going to talk to him today because, as I said in the teaser, 3 out of every 10 people are suffering from depression, clinical depression. That may be you or somebody you can love, but you need to listen to this hour because it's really important. I one time was preaching in a church in Atlanta, and I don't even know why I said it, but I said, if you're on medication, thank God for the medication. God gave us that medication because a lot of you Christians are screwed up, and the medication helps. And a businessman, very successful, came up to me after the service, and he said, I want to thank you for what you said. And I said, what I said about Jesus? He said, no, what you said about depression. And he said, I send some mugs to my closest friend, and I'm going to send you one. I said, okay. And the next week I got it, and I still have it. in red on a white mug. It says Prozac until Jesus comes. And sometimes, don't we, Chris, think that Christians, if you stick them with a pin, they shouldn't bleed. I mean, we're Christians, and we've got grace and mercy and forgiveness and all the means of God's grace. So you may not be saved. You ever think that? Chris, you're on. Tell us your story.
Yeah, well, that's first of all, it's an honor to be here, Steve. I've listened to your show since college, so it's great to be here.
That means a lot.
But you put it well. If you stick them, they shouldn't bleed. But we all do bleed, right? Because one reason I wanted to write the book is because I experienced depression as a Christian, and it's particular to the Christian community or culture. A lot of people say you just need to pray harder, or you need to read the Bible more, or you don't have enough faith. But before a Christian is anything, they're a human being, and so we do bleed, and we're susceptible to all the sicknesses that everybody else is. And so I wanted to just tell my story. I didn't want to write a book that was clinical or prescriptive about here's exactly what you need to do. I thought, I'm a storyteller, so I'll just tell my story and hope that it speaks to people, that they see themselves in my story.
And it's a great story. That time when you got in your car and surprised yourself for breaking down and crying, and then pulled yourself together and went to work and did what you were supposed to do. At that point, did you say to yourself, this is what a Christian does? Or did you have some hint that maybe I need to do something rather than read the Bible?
Well, early on, I had that kind of common attitude. I was like, I'm a man. I shouldn't have to seek help.
Yeah.
And let alone I'm a Christian man, so I should have strong enough faith. I shouldn't be suffering this. It should just go away. But it finally got to the point where it was so bad for me, it was hard to function in daily life. And so I tried some other methods, which we'll talk about.
We'll look forward to that. By the way, he's going to say that if you're going through clinical depression, and I would be bipolar, except it doesn't last but an hour. I can be suicidal 1 hour, and the next hour can be sure that I'm God's gift to the world, and that's kind of scary. But I've been close. I resigned from a church after a major period of depression, and like you, found myself at midnight sitting in my study crying like a baby. And I spent a year, and I talked to a counselor. I didn't try any medication, but my wife has, because I caused depression too. But it's not generally that you're not being good enough, or that you've done something really bad, or that you need to buck up. It's general physiological, isn't it?
Yeah, that's, it's a physical condition, a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it doesn't mean you're a bad Christian or you're a bad person. It's just, like anything else, you wouldn't tell a diabetic not to take insulin, or you wouldn't tell a cancer patient not to try chemotherapy. It's like sometimes we just get sick. And so it doesn't make us bad, doesn't disqualify us as humans or Christians.
I don't know how long this book has been out, but do people who read it, do you find that they're critical of you, or saying things like you expect some Christians to say, why didn't you try Jesus?
Well, I had that experience when I was going through my depression several years ago, which just made me feel worse, because I thought, pray harder, have more faith, read the Bible more. Those are all great things to do. And I was doing them. but I wasn't feeling any better. So that made me feel even worse because, they were well-intentioned, like Job's friends who tried to minister to him when he was suffering, but didn't make Job feel any better in the moment.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So yeah.
You know, I was a pastor. That's all I did was Bible and religion and prayers and ritual and liturgy and religious stuff. Man, I should have been the healthiest, most up person on the face of the earth. And I
Right.
was scared to tell people that I wasn't. In fact, I didn't. I just told them I'm out of here, and I left. But later on, I was not as honest as you are. I need the job, but I, but I was relatively honest with people about that. Were you kind of anxious about feeling you should do this?
Like
To be
writing the
this
book?
honest about what you've been through. Listen, that's a teaser in the industry.
Yeah. Well,
No, don't answer it. You'll screw up the teaser. On the other side of the break, we got to take a break because this is hard work, and periodically we need to rest, have some cookies and milk, and then we're going to come back. And on the other side, the answer to the profound question that I asked, were you kind of iffy and anxious about being dishonest and publicly? The honesty's in a book. It's called And the Darkness Did Not Overcome, and the author is Chris Easterly. And I hold it in my nicotine-stained fingers. Hey, we're glad you're here. We're hanging out with Chris Easterly and his book, And the Darkness Did Not Overcome. Chris, in case you're wondering, is a professional screenwriter and independent filmmaker. He and Matthew go back a lot of years and are friends. And I'm just meeting Chris, and I told him any friend of Matthew's is a friend of mine. He's a graduate of the Warner Brothers Television Writers Workshop. He's written for Fox, Cartoon Network, NBC, Hallmark Channel, and others. He's also a screenwriting professor at Regent University, and his new book, as I said, is The Darkness Did Not Overcome. Chris, before the break, I asked you, I don't know if I would write a book were you kind of anxious and said to yourself, I don't believe I'll say that? Was there any kind of anxiety that was a part of writing this book?
Yeah, there was a little bit of anxiety whenever you're wanting to be honest, but not look like an idiot, but I finally, I've come to the point in my life where I feel like mental illness needs to be discussed and destigmatized, especially in the Christian community. So I thought I've been wanting to tell this story for a while. So I just sat down and wrote it. And, it's a relatively short book. So I don't go into a lot of detail, but I also change some names to protect the guilty, and then I say other names. But it's always a little hard being vulnerable, but I feel like it's worth it.
Oh, man, you did this. In this sense, you can associate with Jesus, the most vulnerable man who ever lived.
Chris, love the tone of it. Reading it, I almost get the picture of like there's a kid who's scared. There's some kind of surroundings, and they're kind of overwhelmed. And then the big brother shows up, and they just grab their hand. And you're like, "Come on, I'll walk you through this." That kind of thing of like, I've been here before. I'll get you through this. Just that friendly uh, authoritative, but authoritative because you have the scars to show for it. Wonder if you take us a little bit back to a little bit more on the story. What's the circumstances? Because you have such an interesting story of living and working in Hollywood. And then when did this depression first kind of make its presence felt? And did you go, oh, it's depression? Or was it a process of like, what is this? What am I just having a bunch of bad days together? Just
Right.
peel us back to the first part of the story.
Yeah, I feel like, thanks for asking that question. I feel like, I say in the book that there were intermittent seasons of sadness when I was a teenager, that kind of thing, but I wasn't, I would say, super depressed. I had a relatively happy childhood and young adulthood. Um, and then it was really more in my late 20s, early 30s where the really heavy depression started to descend on me. And I didn't understand why, because like Steve said, I was, working my dream job as a Hollywood TV writer, and I was in a relatively happy marriage. And I just kept thinking, like, why am I so sad all the time? Because I have no reason to be. So I need to just push through this, especially as a Christian. I need to have faith. I need to pray. It'll go away. But it didn't. It just kept getting worse. So I finally decided to contact a therapist out in California where I was living. And just that little act of making the phone call kind of made me feel better because I thought, okay, I'm trying to get help. So I saw a couple of therapists. We did some talk therapy, and I learned a lot about myself and my family of origin issues and what could be causing depression. But the problem was the depression still didn't go away. Um, so that's when I finally, thought, well, I got to break down and try medicine too.
Yeah. You're not saying don't get therapy.
No, not at all.
No, sometimes just knowing the source and naming the demons, they lose their power. But in
Yep.
your case, that wasn't the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Therapy, is super helpful. And so I recommend therapy along with medication and prayer and fellowship
Yeah.
and all the things you need. Every person is different. And every person's brain is different, what they're experiencing chemically in their brain. So for me, like I said, talk therapy was helpful. But I was still just sad all the time, and I would cry at the drop of a hat, and I couldn't focus at work. Um, Either I couldn't sleep or I slept too much, and I had all these symptoms. But yeah, I just thought, okay, there's something wrong, obviously,
Yeah.
like because depression is not just you have a blue mood for a day or two. It's you're consistently depressed for 2 weeks or more, and it indicates a serious psychological problem you need to deal with, just like you would any other
Yeah,
physical
sure.
ailment.
Chris, you indicate that depression can have like a genetic component to it. Were there or are there points, like especially for parents, that you would suggest? I mean, at what point would you tell a child, there's depression in our family, here are some signs to look for, those kind of things? Or is that almost at risk of self-fulfilling prophecy sort of thing? It seems like there can be a balance in how much you want to
Yeah.
predict it, so to speak, but also kind of get a child ready for it if there's a possibility of it. Any suggestions along that line? And again, obviously, seeing a professional if some signs come up. But any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Well, wow, that's a really good question, because I didn't know that depression ran in my family until depression hit me. And then I called my mom one night crying. I was in California, she was in Kentucky, and she revealed that in her 20s, she had been hospitalized for a couple weeks for depression.
Mhm.
And then a few years later, after my dad got back from Iraq, he went through depression. And so there is definitely could be a genetic component. I'm not sure how soon you should suggest that to somebody. But that's when I found out Maybe suggesting it to somebody earlier, even if if a child's not feeling depressed, could let them know, you know, this
It's
is just
something
something
to
to look
watch
out
out
for.
for. Yeah.
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 Well, it'd be good information to know. If doctors ask that all the time.
Yeah.
Were your parents, did they have diabetes? Did they have cancer? And if so, where and when, and how bad was it? That wouldn't be a bad question to ask, too, about this, and maybe a helpful one. Hey, guys, we're hanging out with Chris Easterly, and this is not a book that will take a long time to read. It's relatively small, and it's called And the Darkness Did Not Overcome, a Christian's Memoir of Depression. We are so human. Well, except me, I'm ordained. Hey, we're hanging out with Chris Easterly, and he's a screenwriter who decided, and a Christian, who decided, what the heck, I'm going to tell people what I went through. And he did it in a wonderful way. And you can get this book at Amazon and other places, and you ought to get it. It's not a hard book, and it doesn't take long to read, but it'll make you think about things that we would rather avoid. And by the way, you can keep up with Chris at Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Easterly, E-A-S-T-E-R-L-Y, books. ChrisEasterlyBooks.com.
Chris, in the last segment, you mentioned, or maybe it was off air anyway, about, when you go to the doctor and they ask about family history and, and all that kind of stuff. I've noticed, this is for all of you that have just turned 50. You have a lot to look forward to, because I've noticed that the older you get, the more frequently the doctor asks the question every time, like when you go for your annual physical. It may be something that you have to do with Medicare, I don't know, but they always ask, are you depressed? Have you been depressed? So I don't know if there's something, even if there's not something genetic, so I'm sort of asking you this question. And I know you don't have MD after your name, but I'm wondering if there's something in addition to genetic considerations with that comes into play with age, with older people, and the possibility of depression becoming something that's more relevant. And I can certainly understand why, if in fact that was the case. But anyway, I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that. That wasn't actually my real question. That was an observation. But you have any thoughts on that?
I think that could definitely have an impact, because as you grow older, you start thinking about your mortality and what you failed to do and what you still want to do, and you have regrets, and those can all lead to, depressed moods. So I think that can definitely have an impact. I don't know. I mean, and depression is mysterious, like I say in the book, it's not clean like math. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. So you could get depressed when you're 14
Right.
or when you're 54. And it's all a mix of the biochemical and, reflections on life. And
Well, and also, older people, especially because, obviously people that are married, one of those that is married is going to lose a spouse. And so the one, especially for those that have been married for, happily married for long periods of time, lose a spouse, they're all of a sudden alone and dealing with that as well. And so I thought that, maybe was also part of it. The question I wanted to ask you was, a number of years ago, I have a friend that was eventually diagnosed that this person was dealing with some depression, and didn't really recognize it. But it was interesting to me that another friend who had gone through depression was the one who said, "I think you're depressed. I think you need to go and see someone." My wondering is, does it take, it's like, does it take an alcoholic to recognize an alcoholic? Does it take someone who's dealt with depression to recognize depression? And I mean, I know it's not the same for everybody, the manifestations of it, but is it something that is not necessarily easy to see for those that have not experienced anything? Does it come from some, like, do you recognize it when you see it in other people right away?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think, a lot of people who live with people who have depression don't understand why their partner or their family member is so sad or angry, and again, they're like, just buck up, pray harder, do whatever.
Yeah.
But unless you've experienced it yourself or stared into the abyss, it's hard to explain. So I think, depression made me more compassionate as a person. Uh, it made me realize, like, wow, people are really suffering, and they may not look like it because you don't necessarily physically show symptoms of sickness. You don't, you're not wearing a cast on your leg.
Yeah.
But you could be so sick that you need bed rest.
Yeah.
But people don't see that, and it's hard to explain that. So I think to answer your question, yes, I think it's harder for people who haven't experienced depression to maybe identify it or understand it.
On the old question and being depressed, somebody said that old people are already irritated about being old, so it takes very little to tick them off. That may be true about depression too. We've run out of time in this segment, but we got another segment coming up. And if you think these have been good, you ain't seen nothing yet. The next segment is gonna be so incredibly profound, so wise that it's gonna change your life. Or not.
You just raised the bar.
Yeah, right. The book is "And the Darkness Did Not Overcome," a Christian memoir of depression. Maybe you're going through it and you wonder, can I get some help? Will I get through this? Don't go anywhere. We're coming back. So glad you're with us. We've been talking to Chris Easterly, who has been wise enough and brave enough to come out publicly with his story about clinical depression. And this is a hopeful book that if you're worried and you're down and it lasts for a longer time than an afternoon, you might want to read. You'll find helpful, and you'll find that it's hopeful. It's called "And the Darkness Did Not Overcome."
Chris, in the book, you have some stories about when you were just really going through it, and there were some little moments where God, very clearly, I think, said, just dropped a little sign to you, just a little something, just to go, I'm still here. I haven't forgotten about you. I haven't abandoned you. Would you tell us that story?
There's a chapter called "Does My Savior Even Know My Name?" based on a lyric from Jeremy Casella, who's a Christian singer in Nashville. And so sometimes we wonder that when we're depressed, does God even remember me? Did he abandon me? Does he know my name? The Psalms talk about that. how long, O Lord? Um, how long am I going to cry on my couch? Why is my soul so downcast?
Mm.
So we do wonder that. And there's a story I'd tell, I'll just tell you real quick. This was about 3 years after my divorce. I went to a monastery about 2 miles north of Los Angeles just to get away for a few days. I didn't have any real specific purpose. I just kind of wanted to get away. And still struggling intermittently with depression. And so I went to this monastery and checked into my guest room, and I was reading my Bible, and then I broke out my notepad and started scribbling, and I thought I'll just journal a little bit. I didn't know about what. And then memories came rushing back to me of the time that my wife had had miscarriages. We had tried to have kids and weren't able to. And for some reason at that moment, those thoughts came rushing back and I just broke into tears. And so I wrote letters to my unborn children, and told them I would have tried to be a good dad and, you
Oh,
know,
man.
that kind of thing. And so, uh, and named them and just kind of said hello and goodbye. And when it was all over, I was like a crying, snotty, slobbering mess, but I had this huge weight lifted off of me. Because I didn't know that I had needed to grieve that. It had been a few years. And so after that was over, I walked down the corridor to the monastery's Coke machine. Yes, monasteries have Coke machines, I guess.
Only the best.
And so at that
So does the
time,
White House, I hear.
at that time, Coke had a marketing campaign where they would put names on the signs of cans. I think they still do that. So it could say like Steve or Kathy or best friend. And so I put my 2 quarters into the machine and the Diet Coke can fell out. And I looked at the side of it and it said Dad.
Oh, man.
And I just stood there stunned. And I'm not one to put my faith primarily in signs and wonders like that, but I really couldn't deny that it was God speaking to me in that moment, and that He was telling me He had called me to grieve my unborn children back in that room, and He was also letting me know that He felt that pain and that it was going to be okay.
That's so good.
So yeah, it's just one of those moments where it's like, yeah, God does know your name and He knows what you're going through, and He's going to take care of you. And me and my ex and our unborn children were going to be okay. So I think He gives us those moments, And what I was experiencing in that room wasn't like depression per se. I would say it was more like unresolved grief. But
Yeah.
unresolved grief can cause depression. It can all be tied up together. So it's a sort of a messy thing, but God is there for us, letting us know He's there with us in all of that.
And affirms. I wrote a book called Lament and Laughter. And lament is very clearly a part of Scripture. There's a legitimate sadness about our loss, which you describe as mourning, but is also a lament. That's what you went through, and biblically warranted also.
Chris, we said, I guess the temptation for a Christian or fellow Christians observing someone experiencing depression is, encouraging them to pray more, read their Bible more, or whatever. And we've acknowledged that, that may not be sufficient, but it doesn't mean that it's not helpful. You mentioned, you quote several Psalms. And then from a practical standpoint, you have kind of a list of to-dos from Thomas Aquinas that was, things that you can do sort of practically. And, if you're on the edge of sinking into a dark mood or something like that, maybe catching it early or something. Can you share some of those things?
Yeah. Aquinas talks about take a bath. Practice self-care. That
doesn't sound very spiritual.
Think of it as baptism.
Come on. Aquinas wasn't Baptist. I guess that's why he said it. But no, talk to friends, cry, he suggests, because when we cry, we release those emotions. And so again, what ultimately helped me, along with prayer and therapy, was I found the right combo of medications, which was Zoloft and Abilify. And 2 weeks after taking it, I woke up one morning and I just felt well, like not super happy, just not super sad anymore. And so I was able to go on and live a functional life, and I still take my medication today. And Proverbs 17:22, I think it is, says, "A cheerful heart does good like medicine." And so that tells us that medicine is good. It's something God provides for us. Uh, you all alluded to earlier. So there's no shame in taking medicine, and God provides all these things we need. And he wants us to be well. Jesus said, I've come to give you life and life to the full. And so if we can't get out of bed in the morning, we can't live life to the full. And if we need to take medicine, or do therapy or whatever it is, exercise, fellowship with other people, that kind of thing, there's plenty of ways to overcome and manage depression.
Oh, we're out of time. This has been a great hour, Chris. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.
And thank you. You've done good. I'm glad you wrote this book. It's honest, it's authentic, and it's really helpful. The name of the book is "And the Darkness Did Not Overcome, a Christian Memoir of Depression." And the most important thing you said, if you're depressed, take a bath. Well, you didn't say it, Aquinas, but listen, it's not a bad source. Bless you, Chris. Thank you for spending this time with us. A great hour and some things that we needed to hear. If you're going through depression or you love somebody who's going through it, don't shake a Bible at them or even take them to church or make them get on their knees. Make them take a bath and get some Zoloft, and we will have solved the problem for you. See you on the other side of the break. Great hour. Chris is a great guest because he's so authentic. He's not in any way trying to impress anybody about anything. He's just saying, look, I've been there, I've done that, listen to me, because I'm not going to lie to you, and he's told you the truth. I think sometimes we forget how human we are. That's one of the things we talk about a lot here at Key Life, and that includes sin. Universally, you're screwed up, and you're a sinner, and there aren't any exceptions to that, and we all, most of the time, spend our time trying to say to the world, we're really good people, and we're not. We're selfish, and we're greedy, and we're lustful, and we're angry, and we're divisive. That's the fallback position of human nature. And once you see it, once you understand it, and you can be as authentic as Chris was about his depression, that's enough. I mean, all of a sudden, the good news is good. All of a sudden, the Christian faith is real. All of a sudden, you understand how God keeps our tears, as the psalmist said, in a little bottle. And that's true of depression, too. I was kidding at the beginning of this thing when I said, it only lasts an hour. Sometimes it lasts more than that. And I hate it. I hate the darkness. And I can't drink adult beverages because God screwed that up. I mean, every man in my family's a drunk, and God broke that with me by making it I can't even have a glass of wine. So what I got to do there is, you did this to me, and you won't even let me have wine. some kind of God you are. And then he hugs me. And at the point of that honesty, that's the crossroads where Jesus meets his people. Well, I assume you have somebody for next week.
I do have someone for next week. We're going to talk with a new friend of Key Life. Her name is Denise Schick, and she has a very interesting story. The book about which we interviewed her is called Moving Forward in Hope. And she has a ministry to transgenders and families of transgender individuals. And she has a number of books. She has her first book that she wrote tells all about her story of this issue in her family. But it was a very, very, very moving interview.
Okay.
With a lot of helpful information.
All right. So don't miss it. We're going to be here, same time, same place next week. Between now and then, have a wonderful life. And don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.